With the final practice ahead of Seattle, the Eagles released some pretty not great news about several key starters. So how long will Slay be out? And Jalen Hurts is sick? Also, what was Kevin Byard's surprising ask of Sean Desai this week? And a positive update on Avonte Maddox. Plus, DiBona of Outside DiBirds discuss possible solutions for the depleted defense. So let's talk about it. But first, let's run it. Hey guys, well let's not waste any time. The Eagles held their final practice ahead of Seattle, and if you were worried before, then you really will be now. After Adam Schefter broke the news that Darius Slay underwent arthroscopic knee surgery this week and will be out Monday night versus the Seahawks. Now, obviously, that's really concerning, but at least the silver lining is that he's expected to be back at the end of the regular season. However, like I talked about on previous shows, and I think most of us know, Slay's your best coverage guy. And like DiBona and I discussed last week, what happens when Slay or Bradbury goes down? Unfortunately, we've got to now answer that question, which I don't blame you if you're not buying it, but Nick Sirianni confident in the plan ahead.
What's our plan? We got the right guys in place.
How long do you expect him to be out?
We'll see.
When it comes to right guys, is it Healy? Is it Josh Joe?
Got the right guys.
All right, I'm not even going to try to hide my concern here because there's also a couple other key losses since it looks like Cam Jurgens won't be able to go as the Birds have been working out mostly Sua Opeta at right guard. And Zach Cunningham has also not been a participant all week with his own knee troubles, meaning we're likely going to get a Shaq Leonard start next to Nicholas Morrow in Seattle. Although if you thought that was bad, it was made 10 times worse whenever Jeff McClain reported that Jalen Hurts has the flu and missed practice today, but is at least expected to play on Monday.
Everybody stay calm! What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure? Stay calm!
I'm sorry, I'm really struggling to take that advice right now because curious if you guys agree, but I think Seattle's going to be a challenge. Heck, we haven't beaten them since 2008 whenever Donovan led the Birds to a 26-7 victory over the Fighting Seneca Wallaces. I don't know, hopefully we break that streak, and hopefully Jalen, despite being sick, breaks his personal streak of fumbles coming into the game. I'm sure by now most of y'all saw the extra ball security drills Hurts did earlier in the week, and I'm a fan of whatever works because QB1's coughed up the rock in 7 straight games. Before you ask, that's the longest by any NFL player since, guess who? Carson Wentz fumbled in 9 straight games in 2020. Let's not get carried away though, Jalen's not turning into number 11. And come on, we know Breed of One isn't going to miss this game, so I'm not too concerned about that. Really, it's more the secondary for me, but curious, what's more worrisome to you guys? I mean, at least the secondary is doing its own scouting reports now, which I hope is a good thing. After Brooks Cabina of The Athletic shared that Kevin Byard asked Sean Desai to let the defensive backs do the scouting report, to which Desai agreed with the arrangement. Byard relayed the message to the rest of the defensive backs and they split up their scouting assignments, with Byard saying everybody kind of picked a player. Byard took quarterback Geno Smith, safety Reed Blankenship took Seattle's tight ends, with James Bradbury, Eli Ricks, Keely Ringo, and Sidney Brown all taking specific wide receivers and running backs. And at least it does sound like it provided a spark, with Byard saying, guys had some really good stuff. You could tell guys really watched a bunch of film, really studied these guys. I would just say hopefully it helps us to play faster on the field. But I also understand how these guys want to play. That's what this league is about. It's a players' league, and you've got to know the people you're going up against. Which James Bradbury also noted getting input from all the guys left a feeling of being in it together, sharing just hearing from other guys, young guys like Sidney and Keely. It was cool to see what they got from watching film based on the players they saw. They had the breakdown. It was really cool to hear them talk because they don't talk a whole lot. Okay, while I admit that it's a little bit odd or strange to hear them talking about this or doing a breakdown in this way, I'm definitely in favor of the veterans taking leadership, and at least you're trying something. I should also mention the best news of the week from Tim McManus, who shared today that the Eagles are opening the practice window for cornerback Avonte Maddox next week per league source, with the expectation that he'll play again this season. And no doubt a positive development in the light of the Darius Slay injury, because I think we're all in agreement that we need Maddox, so if we can just somehow keep things manageable until he gets back, we'll be in a much better spot. And DiBona and I talked about what the Birds can do to find some success. At least the schedule now is getting a little bit easier of sorts. I mean, again, I don't think you can count none of us would, certainly after what we've seen, an automatic win. But, when we're looking at a schedule of in Seattle, I think that could be tough. But then you've got the Giants twice, you've got the Cardinals. It's not the same level of competition. So hopefully maybe a little bit of rest. You get some guys healthy or fresher. You help with the rotation a little bit as well. And you get the rookies, a little more confident. That's never a bad thing. When we're talking about some of the veterans though too, and I know that this can come to a plethora of reasons or, scenarios that come up to why they're playing, good or bad. But let's start with James Bradbury here. The name has come out quite a bit on my show. You've probably seen it on Twitter and other places too. But James Burntberry, he's kind of earned that recognition for this week, or this season, I should say. Why is he so bad at times, or the majority of the time what we've seen? Is there anything that we can pinpoint to? Is it just mainly age? Is there some sort of regression? What is it with Bradbury that he's just struggling so badly this season?
I don't even know. It's weird because I don't think he's been struggling that badly. I just feel like when he does screw up, it's just the worst timing possible. So like if you look at his stats from the Cowboys game, his numbers weren't that terrible. I believe he gave up, I think it was around 60 yards total overall, something like that. But it was a lot of catches. A lot of them went for first downs. One of them was the big pass to Brandon Cooks where, like we said, I think Kevin Byard should have been there for help. At least that's what seemed like James Bradbury was expecting it, and it wasn't there. Besides that, I think he gave up 26 yards. That's according to Pro Football Focus. So take away that one catch, he didn't really have that terrible of a game, but it was just the timing of everything. If you give up 5 catches and they're all catches for 6 yards on 3rd and 5, you're going to look like an idiot on national TV. That's just how it goes. But it's just, unfortunately, I feel like he's kind of just like with a lot of other players, he's kind of being thrown under the bus for the defense, struggling as a whole. And I think on the top of that list should be Sean Desai. I think he's most responsible for everything, but he's really not putting players in position to succeed. And hopefully we see more of that. I feel like in the second half we saw more of it where Keely Ringo was on the outside and they let James Bradbury almost be like a linebacker nickel role where he was covering the running back out of the backfield or the tight end. Maybe that'll be a better situation for him. But it's promising to see them try and switch things up. It's just a matter of if they're going to be consistent and stick to a certain plan.
Anthony DiBona of Outside DiBirds here. By the way, if you're just joining and seeing for the first time, I've said it before, but one of the best follows that you can have on Twitter. Also, OutsideDiBirds.com for the blog. Some really, really great content, especially draft coverage. We've talked about this before, but we will certainly have that as we're leading up to the draft. You mentioned it there, though, with potential changes or scheme, Bradbury, slot, moving him over some places. And you talked about it a little bit as well, but with some of the younger guys like Eli Ricks or Keely Ringo, potentially getting them involved a little bit more. What did you see from them? Just kind of takeaways from film? Are there opportunities to where, maybe you do get them on the field a little bit more? And what you're referencing there as well of James Bradbury playing in the slot some. I know we saw it earlier in the season and I liked the idea at first. We saw a little bit of difficulties. We still struggle regardless on the middle of the field throws. But what do you like from that, and do you see anything changing there?
I think they have to kind of mix things up and just see what works at this point because we're about to be 15 games in or whatever it might be, and things haven't been consistent at all throughout the whole season. I mean, there's been injuries here and there. That's why Bradbury had to go on the inside. Then Roby was out, so they were mixing things up. Obviously, Avonte Maddox might come back. Who knows? But he's been out for a while now. So they're just going to have to kind of throw guys in there and see what happens. But I think, like I said, I mentioned it, the mix of James Bradbury in the slot and that there has to be matchup dependent, though. You can't just throw him in there against a small, fast receiver because that's not going to work. But if there's a team that throws a tight end in the slot a lot, I feel like that might be a matchup that could work where Bradbury can go there. You could put Keely Ringo on the outside because he has speed. I know people question his hips, but he did pretty well. He covered CeeDee Lamb a couple of times and he wasn't even targeted in those situations. So I feel like it's a good chance to throw him out there and see. Eli Ricks, he played, I think, only 18 snaps according to Pro Football Focus, but he wasn't targeted once, so that's promising. But, I mean, they just have to try something different because obviously what they're doing right now isn't working. So I just throw some young guys in there, mix it up, give the offense different looks, and then see what happens.
The situational play calling, we all realize how terrible it's been. We've all lived through these games. There's a reason why in the wins, they're heart attacks, and in the losses, we've had beatdowns and just complete frustration. We're dead last in third down percentage. I mean, all these stats we know, we've lived through. Initially, I feel like earlier in the season, it was, and he's still getting flack, but it's fire Brian Johnson. The offense is trash. There's no excuses. You can make the case that, yes, Desai's had to deal with some turnover, some injury issues, not a lot of continuity. You lose several guys in the slot corner position. There's a number of things, but it feels like the momentum is certainly picking up and possibly, understandably or rightfully so, as far as Desai is not the answer. You need to fire him. However, it's the first season, so I try to be as even keel as I can. I know that's crazy hard to do, certainly with as much as we love our Eagles and we talk about it, you hear from all the fans, but where are you at in terms of, because you did mention that you got to try something. You got to figure out something that works. And we've seen all the film breakdowns of Desai and how he's losing battles. He's putting players in the wrong spots. Are you out on Desai yet? Is there reason to be optimistic? Like, just expectations wise, I know I asked you kind of last week, should we be sounding the alarms? It's one more loss, but it's a bad loss, and it's Dallas. But has anything changed there from what you saw from the one game on that side?
I mean, there's still time to fix it, and I like what I saw in the second half from them. They only gave up 9 points or whatever it might have been in the second half, so that was promising. But I know you asked me last week about if I was pressing the panic button on Sean Desai or the team overall. I mean, I feel a lot different this week. I'm not ready to fire him or move on. I think he still has time to go, and I feel like he's saying the right things. He was kind of doing the right things in the second half with letting those young guys play and see what happened. But the cover on that panic button is definitely open right now. So it's a matter of seeing if he can continue. He's got 4 more games to basically, honestly, coach for his job, because if things don't turn around and they still struggle like they have been on third down, and it's just like, I mean, guys like me and you don't know everything about X's and O's. We shouldn't be able to blatantly pick out these things that he's doing wrong. It's just, and everybody, I know Shane Haff and Johnny Page that have on the Shane page, Bleeding Green Nation, they do a great job of breaking down film every week. That's a great podcast. And they pointed out a lot of the mistakes he was making, especially in third down situations where you just scratch your head. And it's like, how is he making these mistakes so far in the season? It's just mind boggling. And he really needs to turn things around quickly.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. And you mentioned Johnny and Shane. By the way, I've got a link in the description, so if you're watching this, feel free, go check it out. They did a great job of the breakdown. I think Shane was saying, too, as far as just, being close or ready to potentially bail on Sean Desai, and even he admitted, like, hey, I'm not normally that close or ready to do that so quickly. But there's lots of things that need to be cleaned up, and hopefully we see that. Again, this is a... I'm hopeful and curious to know where you're at. I'm hopeful this is one of those games. We got Seattle this week. It's Monday Night Football, primetime matchup. It's Desai's old group, old unit being in Seattle, so maybe even an extra point to prove here. But it feels like you need to certainly make a statement from what we've seen these past couple of weeks. You got to right the ship, get everything back on track. The Super Bowl idea a couple weeks ago was, hey, for sure, right? There's not a question. This team's good. There's some issues, but this team's good. We're going to get the number 1 seed. Everything's going to be okay. Like, we'll figure some stuff out. We'll be good. Now the expectations might have shifted a bit, and I've seen all the stats of, hey, you can't win without a defense in the Super Bowl. I believe that to a very small extent. I think offenses win championships if you have a mediocre defense. Now, we don't have a mediocre defense as of today. We have one of the dead last defenses. However, do you feel like that Desai can at least figure this thing out somewhat in terms of, just be good enough to win? And that'll get us into, kind of offense here in a second. But do you think that there's still hope from this squad to play, again, manageable defense, a game manager from the defense to be, a Super Bowl contender? Do you still feel like we're Super Bowl contenders?
I mean, they can be. They have all I feel like the talent has never been the question for this team. It's just a matter of Sean Desai putting the talent in position to succeed, which he just has done a terrible job of doing so. So I feel like these next 4 games, like you said, a bit lesser competition, although I think the Seahawks are kind of being underrated in this matchup, but we'll get to that. But it's just a matter of proving it on the field. I mean, he says that they're making adjustments or whatever the case may be, that everything is still in front of them. They're saying all of the right things, but like we said after the 49ers game, it's just actions speak louder than words, and it's about going out there and getting the job done. I feel like they have all the talent. The pass rush hasn't looked the same. The blitzes are weird. The coverage is weird. It's just everything is just something's off right now, and there's time to fix it. It's just a matter of them actually doing so.
That's what we're all waiting to see. Hopefully we get those changes fixed. We see the differences. Let's move to the offensive side of the ball too, right? Because again, it's not just one phase. The special teams has been good. I got to give them their praise. As poor as they were last season, it's kind of been an about face now. I was like, well, hey, at least we can rely on the special teams unit. But offensively, right? There's lots of issues. There's lots of concerns. Play calling as well, and the numbers say stats wise that it's not awful, but at the same time, kind of my argument would be that we have so much talent. Like it shouldn't even be like, oh, we're even close to the middle of the pack. Like this should be a leading the pack, number 1 at worst, like number 3, top 3 offense in the league with this squad. And, we've kind of ebbed and flowed, and there's issues of third down and then red zone, and it got a little bit better, just back and forth. I know the schedule's tough, but we talk about a defensive coordinator in Sean Desai, and we have a new one in Brian Johnson, obviously, for first year. Where are we at there? I mean, play calls, what did you see on tape? I know that initially you're saying, hey, it's some positives, right? There's not a complete negative turn away, even though we've had the turnovers for sure. But what do you see play calling wise, some positivity there, maybe things that we can look for going forward, especially into this matchup with Seattle?
I think play calling wise, especially against Dallas, it was actually surprisingly a lot better than I thought it was. I think the turnovers kind of overshadowed everything because they were moving the ball well to start for the most part. It's you can't turn the ball over in those situations that far in Dallas' territory. It's just not going to happen. And against a team like Dallas or San Francisco where they're front runners and they dominate, and when they give them the lead, they're not going to give it back. They're going to go and run with it. So there was just unfortunate timing for those turnovers. They were moving the ball pretty well. The only thing that I didn't like was Dallas was blitzing, and they were letting the Eagles know pre-snap that they were blitzing. They weren't really disguising much. And they just still – this has been a problem even dating back to last year when Shane Steichen was here. They just don't give Jalen Hurts those quick outlets in the passing game where he's facing pressure and you can just dump it off to DeAndre Swift or Kenneth Gainwell. Those guys kind of had to stay into block. And then everybody else, Dallas Goedert, Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, they were just running vertical routes down the field that took like 10, 15 yards to develop. And Jalen Hurts just didn't have that amount of time. And Dallas was doing a great job containing the edges where they weren't giving Jalen Hurts those escape routes to get out inside and throw on the run. So in those situations, I would just like to see more outlets where maybe the running back just chips and then gets out into a passing route. Or they have somebody else, they have two guys run a bit of a shorter in-breaking route to give him more options in those scenarios. So I feel like that's one issue that I've had, and I feel like it's been an issue for a couple of years now in this offense.
Yeah, it's. I thought it was interesting during the offseason, and I can't remember the exact number what it is. It's like I believe it's 28th this year in terms of like targeting the running backs. I could be a little bit off, but somewhere around there. But it's strange to me because in the offseason the report was, hey, Jalen Hurts is going to be passing the running back a little bit more focus in that area. And I mean, ultimately, I don't know that we've seen much of a change. It's been the deep shots. It's been that the offense is going to run through, which I'm okay with. Sirianni made the comment and the reference of the offense is going to run through A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert. Those are your playmakers. Everyone understands that. But when you come away from a game that you have targets going to only those three guys and not a soul otherwise, I'm kind of with you on there when you say, hey, look, they're showing you a blitz. Let's have a little bit more of maybe a hot route, a different read that Jalen can go to, something, and you don't even have a single target. Now, I know that's an anomaly. We probably won't see that the rest of this season. It may be years before we see a game like that. But is there somewhat of a concern of, I don't know if it's just telegraphing it too much. I don't know if it's too stubborn, maybe a Sirianni thing because it looks similar to the 2021 version of his offense. But is there any concern level there from again, I know you said play calling looked a little bit better. There was some execution, but from Sirianni's standpoint, I mean, will we see change? He talked about change, but we've heard that a lot of weeks. Any concern from that side, though, from, again, the takeaway from Dallas and not getting targets to other players on that side?
I mean, I'm never going to argue if those are the only three guys that are getting targeted. Because I feel like we were complaining last season when Quez Watkins was getting targets or whatever the case may be.
That's true.
Or Devontae Smith had no catches or Dallas Goedert had no catches. So, I'm not going to argue if those guys are getting targeted a lot. But like you said, you do have to have a little bit of a mix-up where they have to kind of account for somebody else. Because then you're kind of putting yourself in the situation that they were when Dallas Goedert was out, where they didn't have to guard Jack Stoll. Defenses didn't have to account for them. So now if they have you in an obvious passing situation and they know you're not going to throw it to DeAndre Swift or maybe a second tight end or a third receiver, whatever the case may be, now all of a sudden they don't really have to pay attention to those guys. So you have to mix it up. You have to give them different looks. I feel like one thing I did like that stood out on tape was there was one play where they had DeAndre Swift in the backfield to start, and then they motioned him out to give them the empty formation, and then they ran Jalen Hurts out of it. I feel like if you motion DeAndre Swift into the slot or even outside, because they do have to account for him in the pass game, even though if he didn't get any targets, he's shown that he can be a pass catcher and make plays after the catch. So that look can kind of switch things up, and I feel like we should see more of that. We have, obviously, I think they have the lowest pre-snap motion rate in the league, and that still needs to change, but I don't think that's going to change. But just that one little play, I would like to see more of that, because there's so many things you can do off that one little motion. Sadly,
yes, you're right. I totally agree with you. I know exactly the play that you're talking about. Watched it back a couple times, and you're completely right. The motion, Sirianni says this too, hey, there's other ways to get defenses to tell you what they're going to do and change up design and stuff. So I don't think that we're going to see the change, unfortunately. But yes, I remember that play, seeing DeAndre goes in motion. Immediately, the defense shifts over a little bit. It's just Jalen run up the middle. He's got a big hole in a game there. So I don't know why. I don't know what it is. I know some people get set in their ways. Sirianni says that he said this week in the press conference, he's like, hey, you hear the criticism, you take the constructive criticism, sometimes you adjust, sometimes you change, but then he still kind of defended the whole you don't necessarily have to use motion. Being dead last is always a little concerning to me. If it was like toward the bottom but not dead last, you'd be like, yeah, okay, that's one thing. I'm not saying we need to be the Miami Dolphins of using motion like nearly every play. But I'm with you with the playmakers that we have. You see it way too many times on the film where all of a sudden, hey, you get a little bit of motion, you get the defense shows you something, there's a little bit of a tell, or you run something differently, right? You run motion one play, you run it the next play, expecting the same thing, you got a different result there. So I don't know. I'm hopeful that we get changes there. Curious to kind of as we move into the preview for Seattle. Again, Eagles favored. I think it's by 3 now. At the time of this recording, I think it's 3. It opened up. Got up to, I believe it was Eagles -4 or -4.5 maybe, but it's gotten down to, I think, 3 with Geno Smith likely starting again at the time of this recording. But what do we need to do offensive side of the ball against Seattle, knowing their defense, kind of seeing what we've watched the past couple weeks, certainly in the matchups with very similar opponents and recency, too. We've played the 49ers and the Cowboys. They played the 49ers and the Cowboys. So there's a lot of recency on film. What are you noticing and I guess hoping to see too from the offensive unit?
I feel like there's going to be opportunities there to make plays. Seattle's secondary has kind of been a little penalty prone. They've been able to get thrown on for quite a bit. We saw Dallas kind of run the ball up and down the field on them through the passing game. And I feel like the opportunities will be there. It's just a matter of holding onto the ball, not fumbling, and they should be able to put points up. But I think Seattle's kind of being slept on. I think the line is a little, I don't know, it's a little scary to me because after those last 2 weeks, I just don't have the same confidence that I have in the Eagles. And I feel like the Seahawks are more talented than their record says they are. I like their offense coordinator, Shane Waldron. He does a lot. We just talked about how the Eagles don't use pre-snap motion. Shane Waldron loves to give all different kinds of looks. He'll have like 2 tight ends in the backfield, then they motion to the line of scrimmage, and all of a sudden it's like a power run formation. And just like don't know what to expect. And it's like the complete opposite of the Eagles offense. So I'm just terrified because it seems like that pre-snap motion and all the playmakers that Seattle does have is kind of what's given the Eagles problems all season long. And I know you asked about the offense, but I'm kind of giving you how I feel about the defense as well. But it's just there's going to be opportunities on offense. It's just a matter of them capitalizing on them. But I just get scared that the defense is going to give it right back.
I don't like hearing that, but honestly, I'm kind of with you too. Like Thomas and I did our Wednesday Link Live, and just like, hey, what are the predictions? What do you expect to see? And he's saying 10-point, 15-point Eagles blowout win. And while I would love to see that, I'm a lot closer on your side. It's scary. I don't like the line. What we've seen recently, obviously, and the playmakers that they have. Like you talked about, you get the offensive coordinator, you got the playmakers. I've said this, I think I said this in our last recording. I say it just about every single time. If you have a slot receiver, if you have a tight end that plays against the Eagles, you should just go ahead and start him every week, because until the defensive Desai can prove otherwise, it's going to be an automatic guarantee of a minimum 10 points and probably going to go off for 25 or 30. So that is my fear. I do feel like this is going to be a shootout. Both teams are we're dead last, but I think the Seahawks are 27th, 28th in third down defense as well. So neither team can get off the field, and the Seahawks have tons of penalties. So whether it's a conversion of a third down or just keeping a drive alive because of penalties, I don't expect this to be a defensive battle or changing anything from that side. So hopefully the offense for us can continue to score. I think that they will. But as far as we look at this matchup, big ramifications, not only just individually short term, but long term. We're talking about the record wise. Before we get into score predictions and kind of wrapping up on that segment. With Dallas playing Buffalo this week, do you expect to see maybe a potential slip up there? I think the Bills are favored by 2, and can we use this in the last several games here? Do you see us being able to run the table? What are the expectations? To get we don't necessarily hold our complete destiny in our hands, but it's at least the number 2 seed. If we win out, we get the number 2 seed. Depending on if San Francisco loses, then maybe the 1 seed. But what do you expect there?
I think Buffalo's a lot better, another team that's a lot better than their record says they are. And Josh Allen's playing out of his mind. I know he gets roasted a lot for his turnovers, but he's playing really well. And I feel like Dallas' defense, we saw the Eagles move the ball on them last week. So I think Buffalo's offense will be able to move the ball on them. They actually get there. They throw to James Cook a lot out of the backfield. So that's something that Dallas is going to have to account for as well, unlike the Eagles did last week. So I think Buffalo could certainly win that matchup. That wouldn't surprise me at all. But I'm just not so confident in the Eagles being able to win out and take care of their own business. So I hope they do. The schedule is obviously favorable, but it's just my confidence. After being very confident last week, I am not so confident anymore.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you. If you had to pick one, let's say that we beat Seattle, and again, everybody probably knows this by now, but if you don't, haven't beaten Seattle in 15 years, 7-0 for Seattle. They've won 7 straight. So it's been a long time. It's going to be a tough matchup. Prime time, I would be shocked. I hope it's a blowout. I hope we just take care of business, but it won't be surprising if it's difficult. But let's say we get the win there. Is there, out of the 3 remaining games, we got the Giants and, DeVito and the Magic there possibly, and the Cardinals. You got Jonathan Gannon coming to town. But out of those 3, which one fears you the most?
Probably one that game, Christmas Day against the Giants. I know it would be in Philadelphia, but if they win this week, all the hype in the world is going to be surrounding Tommy DeVito. And if the Eagles win, it's going to be a big matchup, much bigger than we all expected, because the Giants are kind of thriving out of nowhere. And they're kind of getting healthy. Darren Waller's returning. But the only thing that would worry me about that game is we just saw the Eagles struggle against the blitz. And I don't think anybody loves the blitz more than Wink Martindale and the Giants. So it's just that kind of matchup could kind of get ugly. And I'm not saying the Eagles would definitely lose, but I think it would be a lot closer than a lot of people thought when the Giants were struggling to start the season.
I agree. I'm sadly in agreement there. It's one of those that before the season, like you talk about, it's like, hey, we got Boston Scott, we got the Giant Killer, we're good to go. We're going to just roll them. That's an automatic win. But until they prove me otherwise, there's no automatic win, as we know. So little concerned. I'm just going to say that right now. But okay, so to wrap up here, though, score predictions, Monday night, obviously, against Seattle. We think it's going to be a close game, but exact score prediction, what you going with?
I don't want to do it, but maybe this will be kind of like a reverse jinx, but I'm actually picking the Eagles to lose. I have the Seahawks winning 27. The Eagles, Seahawks winning 27-24. I'm not happy about it.
Ooh, okay.
Seattle's running backs scare me. They're obviously all their weapons in the passing game scare me. So it's kind of where I'm at the point where the Eagles have to prove it to me at this point. I just can't pick them in this situation.
All right. Hey, I can respect sticking to that. I hope that you're dead wrong, and hopefully it's a reverse jinx, because we jinxed it last week whenever we were taking the Birds over the Cowboys. That didn't work. So I'm gonna go with the Eagles. I do genuinely think that we will win, but like I say, I'm a lot more nervous than some other people out there. So I'm gonna say Eagles win 31-27. It'll be a nail biter, whether it's a last-second stop for us or maybe we have to go down and score on the final possession. I don't expect it to be a blowout, so that's what I'm going to go with, but we'll see. It's sad that we're, feeling this way or saying this way, but they haven't proved it enough recently. So, again, I hope we're wrong. Maybe we reverse jinx it on that side, but I appreciate you joining as always. Again, it's always a blast talking Birds. If you're not following Anthony, by the way, just again as a reminder, Outside DiBirds on Twitter, one of the best follows out there. All the extra insights during games, from scout coverage, players. You got the Senior Bowl that you're going to be at, so definitely going to be all the draft coverage. Hopefully, yes. We'll kind of speak that into existence. But no, all the coverage there, as well as OutsideTheBirds.com. So appreciate it as always. Let us know, too. You watching the video, comments section, what's your score prediction as well. Until next time, we will see you then. Go Birds.
Go Birds.